Hi there, Internet. Michael Bisog here. Have you ever heard somebody say healthcare is a right or education is a right? I have. And we're going to talk about why that's stupid. So, in this last election cycle, Bernie Sanders, Democratic Socialist, basically promised all the college students free healthcare and free education. I think this follows on from Obamacare, or the Affordable Care Act, and the promises that it kind of created for people, and the fact that everyone had to push it in the Democratic Party in order to gain acceptance of it, even though it is the government saying you must purchase something. So it's the government telling you that you have to work for something so that you can buy something that you didn't want. The problem with that, the problem with healthcare being a right and education being a right, is that it's a statement of a positive right, something that must be given to you. And if you read the Constitution, if you read the first 10 amendments at least, there are no positive rights there. My right to keep and bear arms is not a positive right, it's a negative right. It's a right to be free from the government stopping me from keeping and bearing arms. It's my right to free speech is not a positive right. Speech is not given to me. It's a negative right. The government cannot infringe upon free speech. So there really is no such thing as a positive right. You don't have a right to anything that is not in you. Simple as that. All your rights are inherent. And so the enumeration of rights is done by a negative attribute. It's done by listing what cannot be done. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, watch my first video on the First Amendment. It should help. So the idea that healthcare is something that is a right of the people really means that you as a citizen of the United States have a right to make someone else work for you. You have a right to make a doctor perform surgery on you. You have a right to go into a pharmacy and take prescriptions that somebody else worked to make, that somebody else owns, that somebody else paid for. You have a right to those things. Does that sound right to you? Does that sound correct? Education is the same thing. The right to education could be construed as a properly negative right. No one has a right to prevent you from educating yourself. And in that, I would absolutely agree. Just like with healthcare, I would absolutely agree that your health is your right. No one can prevent me from managing and taking care of my health however I want to. Which is why, for the same reason, the government can't tell me I'm not allowed to go snowboarding. The government can't tell me I'm not allowed to drive a vehicle on my own property as fast as I want. If healthcare is a right, a positive right, then the government now has an interest in forcing you to maintain your health the way they want. Which means no more snowboarding, no more cars, no more dangerous jobs at all. A positive right would require that the government control you. And people who don't think that are lying to themselves. It's intellectual dishonesty. So I always hear this, though, when I get to a slightly different point. What I think is there's a misunderstanding of basic economic principles that undergirds this idea that you can have a positive right. That you can have a right to someone else's property, someone else's hard work. I mean, we went pretty far, I think, in being the first part of the world The West was the first part of the world that decided that there was a moral argument against slavery. I mean, China had more slaves in the 1850s than we've ever had. There were more slaves in India in 1860 than there were in the United States. Yeah, so it was new for us to say, no, slavery is not good. Slavery is bad. And people want to revert to that, but call it something nice, like, free healthcare. And so, yeah, I think that there's this terrible misunderstanding of economics. And I think really it comes from like a high school and elementary school education in Keynesian economics, which, there's 5-minute videos on Keynesian economics and how it fails miserably every single time that you should absolutely watch. And I'll put a link in the description. And that's, I think, it's like the basic problem. They don't really understand free market capitalism. They don't understand true economics, and so they ascribe to this like made up Marxist, communist, socialist BS. So what I always hear is like that people make too much money, and we could take that money and pay for the healthcare, pay for the college education of all the people who need it. And I think there's something broken there in that logic. Why is it people? How could you ascribe any amount of money as too much? It doesn't make any sense to me, and so I have to kind of try to work through it to understand where they're coming from. And they'll say things. I'm taking this from Louder with Crowder. Steve Crowder. He always uses this analogy, like the $19 million that the CEO of Walmart made last year. Oh, that's too much. And he says, that's 19 more millions than I have. And that's why people have this moral outrage against it, this emotive reaction to it. And I'm like, but that doesn't make any sense. Walmart employs 1.4 million people. That's, if you think of it like this, if you were offered a job for $50 or $60 or $70 or $100,000 a year, and all you have to do to get that job is graduate high school and pay a guy $13.85. Just once, just pay him $13.85 once a year. That's your finder's fee, I guess, for the job. Would you do it? For a $50 or $60, $70,000, $80, $90, $100,000 job, would you pay him $14? You could walk around most major cities and find $14 within a 24-hour period. It's $14 for the opportunity to have a job worth tens of thousands. Because that's what the CEO of Walmart is getting paid. He's getting $14 per person. In the U.S. alone. It's actually less if you count his employees outside the U.S. He created, I don't want to say created, Sam Walton created a situation where you can employ almost 2 million people. And the CEO keeps it running, keeps those 1.9 billion people employed. So is $14 a year too much? That's ridiculous. I think the biggest part of this problem is created in the education system, both in the understanding of economics and the lauding of Keynesian economics, which is utter crap. But also in this everyone is the same, no one loses, everybody, like saying that you're better at something than somebody else is mean. It's not nice. It's not nice to tell somebody that you got a better score on a test than them because you studied harder, because you did your job. It's not nice to win. It's all crap. But I think being raised in that ideal, you start to have this distorted worldview where, one guy making $19 million and you making, $25,000 or $100,000, it doesn't make sense. How could that guy make 19 million and I make $100,000? We're the same. He's not better at anything than I am. I could go and sit in his chair and do his job. So why does he make 19 and I don't? And that's where it all comes from, that ridiculous concept that you and he are the same. You and he are equal. You're born equal. We believe that in this country. We believe it about people outside of this country. But you were lucky enough to be born in this country where that matters. Because you could be born in India. You could have been born as an untouchable. And if you're born as an untouchable in India and you stay in India your whole life, you die as an untouchable. Guaranteed. So equal or not, doesn't matter. You're untouchable. You will never, ever make anything of your life. But instead you were born here. So instead of whining and crying like, why does he make 19 million and I don't? You're born in the US, you should be celebrating the fact that you can make $19 million. You can do that. So stop complaining about the fact that you don't have 19 million. But really all you care about is that you get your free education and your health care for free, paid for by somebody else. So this idea that somebody who makes $19 million a year is selfish is just projection, because you're selfish. Except the only difference is he works for it and you whine about it. Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please click like. And if you want to see more of this content, go ahead and click subscribe. I hope to see you soon. Be safe.